Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa, our first live stream. And today I couldn't think of a better way to start and initiate the first live stream with our focus on Australia. So welcome to our beautiful usual Jade. And then we have our amazing guest, Adrian John Wells, as our very special guest today, who from a very young age was trafficked by high-level Australian government, police, Navy, Air Force, horror of horrors. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to those amazing people. And yeah, over to you, Jane. Welcome and thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, that's all right. Hello, everybody. First, I'll say how I came across Adrian, first of all, for quite a few years because of my life story and everything. I would read a lot of people's different stories and everything. And accidentally, I think a few years ago, I came across Adrian's story. So over the years, I've seen bits and pieces. And I noticed on, I remember a while ago, I was like, what's his name again? Because I'm no good with names. And last week when we did something with Gabby, there was someone that mentioned Adrian's name and said, why doesn't someone get Adrian on? So I went, hey, yes, that's his name, Adrian. So I went searching for him. And I found Adrian and gave him a message. And he was very nice and polite to say, hey, yeah, I'll talk. So I'll let Adrian take it from here, whatever he wants to say, because it's his story. And first of all, I want to say thank you for Adrian for trusting us, for letting us hear your story. And second of all, before he starts, I want to say to anyone that's listening and stuff that everyone has their own truths and everyone's lives are different, and for us to all respect each other. Okay?
Absolutely.
And yeah, Adrian, I'll let you start off. That's all right.
Yeah, so I guess my life started off very difficult, from a young child. So it was from before birth. My father was murdered in 1979. He was the head of the painters and dockers in Melbourne. So they were very seen as thugs and known underworld figures of Melbourne. Melbourne also has this underbelly, type of regime that they go on about. I don't believe my father was from the underbelly, but he was supposed to be part of the underworld. So, that's going on before I was born. So that's to the 1970s. So that's the reason why I was targeted. I was targeted because of my deceased father. He was murdered 2 months before I was born on 9th of February, 1979, and he was the head of the unions, maritime unions, and basically shipyards and painters and dockers. I mean, everyone has probably heard of the painters and dockers at some stage if you're a bit older than me and been around the world and travelled. So their union was under attack by a government regime. So you can understand my story, starting at such a young child age, retaining information as a child isn't that easy at all. But when you're taken into the custody of military forces who are using highly advanced intelligence agencies like ASIO, Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, the DIO, they're called the Defence Intelligence Organisation. They're part of what's called Five Eyes spy agency. So you can see they were taking down unions before I was born because they were striking around the world. England, Canada, United States of America, Mexico. I don't know so much about China, but more Western nations. New Zealand. All these countries were involved. So they weren't a small union. Their organisation around the world was global. And I was taken by the Australian Army, as you could think, maybe as a ransomed child. I was ransomed off to the military forces to control these unions. So
can I just interrupt you there and ask you, when you say you were ransomed off, your dad was murdered, I understand that, and really that's awful. I'm sorry that was your beginnings in life. Where was your mum, the rest of your family at this stage? How come you got to be ransomed off? Was there no one who could protect you at that stage?
So my mother had just bought a house in the year 1982, and I'll give the address because so many people came to the property. So highly illegal what they did. My mother bought the house in 1982, number 4 Scarlett Street. My mother was actually a very, I'm not too sure how to explain her. She worked in brothels. She did work in sex work, but she was lesbian. And I would say overall, her lovers, she had wives. So my mother was married to women and she wanted children. So there was myself and my half-sister. So my mother chose the men, obviously, that she wanted to have children too. But there was none of those men around to protect her. My mother had no protection, but it was very cunning the way it was first initiated. The actual kidnapping by the Australian Army is not even my mum's family even knew where she lived. Not her brothers, not her sister, not her mother, only her girlfriend. So when my mother bought that house in number 4 Scarlett Street, it was a trap. She didn't know a Vietnam War veteran lived down on the corner. James Raymond Burke was his name. His rank, I think, in the Australian Army was Lieutenant Colonel. His personnel number was 18,252. So he was a Vietnam War veteran. He had done 2 tours in the Vietnam War, and he was the only original access that I could say was how all these people were suddenly brought into our lives that didn't even know us. So I'm talking men. My mum didn't even allow men to come into her own homes that she owned. So my mum owned her own home by the age of 18 with her girlfriends. So, this was, the suspicion level was too high as it was. Not only did my mum not even allow her own brothers in the house, I had been ransomed. My mum had been dragged out of the house by military men. They just bashed her in front of me and dragged her out into a military police vehicle when I was a child, straight out of the house. So I was taken then by soldiers called Special Forces. In Australia, they're called the Special Air Service Regiment. They're not from Melbourne at all. They're from another state. They're from Sydney. They've recently been under investigation, the same squadron, for killing innocent Afghanistan citizens during the Afghanistan war. I believe it's an overall cover-up for what they did to me as a child, because there was a lot of evidence against the Australian Army for what they did to me. So starting my story here, you can see the level of confusion. My mother's a lesbian. She's just given birth. She's had 2 children. She's got a gay lover, her wife. She's just bought a house in Mordialloc across from the airport. And this Vietnam veteran didn't take off his mask, basically, until 2 years later, basically. So 1984 is when he started to appear out of his guerrilla war uniform, that we set you up sort of thing, So, they were, this type of warfare they used was very cunning. The involvement of civilians, the civilian population, was all Hollywood. It was all Hollywood. The Australian Army were making...
Sorry, I just want to ask you here again. Obviously, they wanted you, because from what I'm hearing and from what I'm seeing, or what I'm hearing you say rather, is that they really were targeting you. They were not going to let you go, to the extent that they did what they did to your mum as well, obviously to get you, because now we know what lengths these guys will go to when they want their kids. So do you know what was specifically the reason that you were targeted? Did you have bloodlines?
Dismantle unions in Australia. It was dismantling unions. So it was basically, they wanted to dismantle unions, remove their positions of power and port authority. And from what I could understand as a child, where I was taken to and the people I met in the United States of America, is they were starting a cocaine regime around the world. to frame everyone. And this was agencies like the CIA, FBI, Hollywood. This is CIA spies in Hollywood that I was taken to as a child. So it was a massive cocaine organised plot to sabotage Labor governments, not just in Australia, England, to sabotage the Labor government in England, to sabotage any Labor government who was affiliated to unions and maintained close, strong political ties to unions who are basically protecting workers' rights and workers' pay. So these conglomerate entities were trying to dismantle unions and turn everyone into scabs wages, what we know as the United States of America. Everyone works for $5 an hour. In Australia, you go up against a union and see how far you get, and you get paid $5 an hour. You know what I'm saying? So there's different countries where the union is weak and the unions are strong. In Australia, they're very strong because people want to get paid a good wage. So now the unions weren't just about that. As I said, there was maritime unions where my dad come from. There was trade unions where my sister's dad came from. My sister's father, I don't know if it was definitely him, but I believe it was. I just believe my mum sort of kept our father's secret because of who they were, was Ronald Chadwick was his name. And he was head of a trades union here in Melbourne, and they were called the Storemen and Packers, I believe they were called. Pretty old, going back to the 70s and 80s. Future unions were then created later. Did they know what happened to us as kids? I'm not sure. It would seem strange if they did know what was going on, but the army were in guerrilla uniform when I was taken as a child. They would make sure that they would just run through in stealth in the middle of the night, bash my mother in front of me, and I mean pulverize her like a police officer, but with military police, just pulverize her and drag her out of the house straight into a military police vehicle. This didn't just happen once. This was like a Hollywood occult style. We want to let you go. We're going to dictate to you what's going to happen. So my mother was, what I'm saying, she was released on and off and then taken back in by these thugs. She was never the same. She was never the same. My mum's other girlfriend, Moon, my mum had broken up with Forsyth, that was her name. Margaret Forsyth was my mum's wife that she had originally been with. So that's how my mother met my father originally, Victor Allard. So they were from old gangs and stuff back in Melbourne, like pretty old gangs. I think they were called the Bodgies and Widgies back in the day, like well before my time, but, going back to probably 1960s. 50s even, Bodgies and Widgies, I think they were called. They were like different gangs and stuff, local gangs and stuff around Melbourne. So anyway, my mum, Margaret Forsyth, was much older than my mother. And when they split up, my mum got with another lady, Moon was her nickname, or Faye or Maeve. I can't even remember her name now. It's just gone for some reason. She was from Perth, and I didn't even really know her as a child. She had just driven back in 1984. She was very wealthy. She was lesbian. Her parents, I think her grandparents had passed away. Her grandfather was a head judge in Perth, like a magistrate, chief of justice. When she drove to Melbourne, this police and army gang jumped my mum's girlfriend. I mean, they just jumped her in broad daylight. They stole her car. It wasn't even her car. It was still registered to her father, or her grandfather, in Perth. Just passed away. It was from a deceased estate. This thuggery was unbelievable. My mum's girlfriend on that side of the family, well, Faye was her name. They used to own like a florist and a shop in what was called Perth Central. It was a shopping centre, and a big mining company bought out the shopping centre and built a high-rise tower there that is there today, which now houses the finances for the richest lady in Australia called Gina Reinhardt. So were the army paid by big corporations to do this? Yes. People like Lang Hancock, people like Clive Palmer, people like Kerry Packer and his son James Packer, Crown Casino. There was many of these people that wanted to move into Melbourne financially And Melbourne was seen as a stronghold for unions. So not me, because I was just a little kid, but my dad was seen as like an underworld mafia boss who was a good heart. He had a good heart. Like, people who knew my dad, Victor Allard, said he was always, give cars to women if they needed a car, if they were working on the street. He'd just give away cars or give them money, or whatever they needed. Like, he was probably too kind to a lot of people. But Hollywood was moving in. And when I mean Hollywood, when I say Hollywood, I'm talking CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, with the FBI, and cocaine was coming to Australia either way. So it was a transition time of dismantling unions and opening up the shipping port for drugs for the opposition government, because trade unions were affiliated to the Australian Labor Party. The people who stole me were seen as, and still are to this very day, in the Liberal Party of Australia with the army. And they're known as far right-wing liberal extremists. So as we know, in each country, liberals mean different things in each country. Like America, the left and right wing's a bit different to the Australian left and right, or British, or Canada, or even South Africa. So the man I ended up in custody with when the Special Air Service Regiment had bashed my mum, dragged her away in a military police vehicle. And that, as I said, that was done in the middle of the night when I was a little boy, and I must have been only 3 years old. My mum had only owned the house for not even 12 months. Now, some of the memories came back later, because when I was returned back home, the Australian Army had what's known as community mobbing or community watch style undercover agents working for them, monitoring my family. So even the neighbours next door to the house where my mum had bought her house were bribed off to move out of their own house and allow 3 young Australian Army soldiers to move in, just reservists. But they were monitoring my family under what ASIO's authority, which is called a matter of national security in Australia. But you can see there is no matter of national security. So because my dad is dead, my mum doesn't work at the shipping port. My mum had no access to the shipping port. My mother didn't do drugs. So they had nothing. You could see they were ransoming. This is what I'm saying. I was taken and ransomed off into a political espionage agenda, because what has a child got to do with anything? I was 3 years old. What has a child got to do with this? Nothing. So, it was very, it was underhanded. It was callous. It was malicious. I could go on for days with the behaviour of this Liberal Party of Australia and their government, how long they've been getting away with espionage in the government. Political coup is the worst thing that they established in Australia post this operation. So the operation then was when I was taken out of my mum's custody into the army. I was taken overseas. I was taken to South Africa. I was taken to England. I was taken up to Northern Scotland. I was taken to Republic of Ireland.
What were you doing there? What did they?
First, United States of America.
Sorry.
The army were taking me every time. We would go to intelligence buildings, which, like in Canada, would be called Canada Security Intelligence Service. In America, I was taken to the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. So
what were they doing? Were they doing mind control? What were they doing when they were taking you to these?
I was being ransomed off into a political agenda under the man at the time, who was a Hollywood celebrity. He was the president of the United States of America, and his war on drugs was a complete lie. Ronald Reagan. So Ronald Reagan was probably behind the assassination orders to kill my dad in the first place. That was before he came president, because he didn't come president until 1981, when my sister was born. My dad was murdered in 1979. The amount of involvement with them internationally, and it involved the British royal family. So I was in California when Her Majesty was there, Queen Elizabeth II and the Duke. So that stems off into a very strange, twisted story growing up back in Australia with everyone going through Five Eyes secret initiations. So it becomes very messy, my story. It's very technical to explain because I was branched off with so many people, Anyway, the initial kidnapping from number 4 Scarlett Street, Mordialloc, Victoria, 3195 is the postcode, across from Moorabbin Airport. The Vietnam War veteran lived on the corner, and his address was 246 Lower Dandenong Road, Mordialloc. And as I said, James Raymond Burke had done 2 tours in the Vietnam War. He was involved in this setup against my mother. As I said, no one knew where we lived. No one. You can't just have suddenly an army turn up at your house, but no one knows where you live. Just bought the house. We hadn't lived there 6 months. We go missing. We all go missing. Because even our neighbour at number 6, she knew the lady just bought the house. They just moved in, and then she told other neighbours later, after we lived at that address for a while, the family disappeared. 6-7 months gone. Just disappeared. So, that was in 83, I'm pretty sure. Start of the year, like probably the month of January, 1983. So I was taken to Sydney and then back to Canberra, which is called the Australian Capital Territory, and I was kept at what's called Royal Military College, Duntroon. It's where all military officers come out of, and that is where the current Governor-General of Australia was located at that time, between a Sydney regiment of Special Air Service Regiment and the Military Officers College. So I was kept there. I was abused there. I was kept there with church clergy, like different church clergy for the army. And mainly I was passed around like a rag doll. The operation...
When you say
overall,
you were... Sorry, Adrian, when you say you were abused, are you talking molestation?
Molestation, mental, psychological, a lot of psychological abuse. So the psychological abuse is you're a child crying for your mother, and they're passing you off to strangers every 4 hours. So every 4 hours, you're going to a new person or a new husband and wife. A lot of these husband and wife teams that I was passed to are now politicians with their accomplice in crime or associate at that time. But as I said, they were a far right wing, completely backed by ASIO. So ASIO in Australia is the major spy agency. And I was ransomed in that sense because a child has got nothing to do with a political agenda. A child has got nothing to do, definitely, with a matter of national security. So why did they take me then? You know what I'm saying? They still took me trying to get into the shipping docks. It was still a strategic plot to infiltrate my dad's shipping port, sack all the men that work there, and send in their own new scabs that they were called, because that's what ended up happening. So, the army's mannerism of doing this was breaching not only their own protocols, they've broken every single law in the book. They've broken every single code that they're even sworn into their oaths when they join the military. So, the abuse of power, I don't know if I think other militaries might be like this in countries like Mexico or possibly Brazil or, South Africa has had some bad regimes over the time with the apartheid system. What the army were doing here in Australia was such a far out breach of their own protocols. They were just breaking the law and they just didn't care. It was just straight out agenda, straight out American, they were just completely attached to making sure almost that Ronald Reagan got in as president he was already in, obviously, 1981. But what I'm saying is his movements between Australia and the United States of America and their establishment of the Five Eyes spy agency was sort of like maintaining his presidency, So they were trying to almost rig government and keep that Ronald Reagan in power because he was more, his philosophy on military was much more, expanding military budgets, opening up funding, opening up any access that they've got to funds in the United States of America, whether it be taxpayers' money or drug money or anything, just collect it all and put it all into the military industrial complex. So, this is where it sort of went wrong. The man who did take me overseas was definitely the current Governor General of Australia. He did it very, very sneakily in the sense of he used NASA. People know the space agency, NASA. That's how he utilised his authority in the US to almost squeeze his way through into other departments. It was cunning what was done with me as a child. He knew how to profile. He was working as an undercover agent, but he was only an army officer. But the department he worked for held me hostage right up to the age of 13 years old. So this is how I'm telling you my story today. And the story could go into possibly 3 parts. Would be quite because it's 10 years of a hostage situation. We're talking from 1982, around the end of the year, up to Aspendale when I lived there, and 1993. So 1993, over 1,000 people vanished, and they all moved to England and the United States of America, and they're now all celebrities, all Australian, and they're all celebrities.
When
Some
you
of them
say,
in England.
Sorry. I definitely, firstly, I want to just say I am very happy for us to break this over a couple of recordings, because I'd be very interested to hear what you had to say in that time, firstly. Secondly, I want to say to you, when you say, I want to ask you rather, when you say 1,000 people disappeared, who are these people? And another question I have for you, if you can just pop it in there before it slips my mind. Were you the only child that was being trafficked and used in such a disgusting way, or were there other kids that were also with you?
There would be other children that were abused in the way I was, but not at the level, because you got to understand this is strategic military. So this is almost like was a espionage plot for the Ronald Reagan administration in the US to infiltrate Australia through espionage and taking the vulnerability of shipping ports. Because Ronald Reagan, no American government, it doesn't matter if they're Democratic or Republicans, are for unions. They're really not. Because America, over the past 40 years, has shown that. They won't even lift the minimum wage. They won't even pay people a basic minimum wage so people can live. So America's burnt all its bridges there in regards to both political parties because they're both in on it. So the point is that this wasn't just a breakdown of just attacking my family, is what I'm saying. This was hitting ahead of a union, taking them down and dismantling it into a global arrangement. My dad's shipping port today, okay, his authority got turned into something called Patrick Stevedores, is who they're called today. Patrick Stevedores don't say that they're a sole trader, almost like a single corporation entity. Their entity as a corporation is a conglomeration of affiliated organised drug dealers from every government in the world. That's why I was taken overseas, including South Africa, to the government even then in 1983. So he went around to every country with me, bribing their governments to build a conglomeration, what's called now, as we know on Melbourne shipping docks in Australia, as a conglomerate of Patrick, what's called Patrick. Now, Patrick didn't move into Australia and take over finally on Melbourne shipping docks until about 1997. But by then, they had finally, through holding me hostage for so many years and attacking me, they built up a false alarm through them creating terrorist attacks, the Australian Army, with a corrupt government, and civilians working for them, that they propagated a security level through ASIO. Now, they propagated that themselves through child exploitation. They were the ones doing it. So every crime that they were committing against me, they were saying it was a corrupt union who were an underworld and an underbelly crime syndicate. So the army came in at full force to control this mafia in Melbourne. It wasn't the reality. It was never the case. because that's not how I was abused. I wasn't abused by my own people who were in the unions. I was abused by an opposition government, the Liberal Party of Australia.
My
So
gosh.
they were the ones that trafficked me, raped me, psychologically abused me, enlisted me into military. I was taken by the order of Vietnam War veterans into secret departments in the United States of America. I was taken to Area 51 in the US with the Army, with the Australian Army. We were on base on that site, Area 51 in Nevada. And Edwards, I think it might be called, Air Force Base in 1983. So it was very dodgy what Hurley...
Sorry to interrupt you again. I'm just very curious. You mentioned that you had been taken to South Africa as well and held hostage here by what I'm assuming must have been high government officials in 1983 as well, which was the
Well, they would have been Army.
Can you mention names?
Army.
Can you mention names? Do you remember anyone?
No, I just know that they definitely would have been through the ranks of major. They were all in their propagated fields globally. A lot of this information, as I'm saying, I wouldn't even remember from my childhood.
Sure.
It was that I was forced to be raised with other Australian citizens up to the age of 13 years old. All those other Australian citizens were given what happened to me as a child via other Australian Army soldiers. So those citizens then got enlisted into Five Eyes spy agency. They all live now in England or in California. Like Tom Hiddleston lives in England. He's not English. But I can't say that he's not English because I'm English. You know what I'm saying? Most Australians are English. Doesn't matter where you go around the world. If it's a Commonwealth nation or was Commonwealth, family ties, our family heritage, most likely you're going to be English or possibly Irish or Scottish or Welsh or something. So, you know, what I don't want to propagate that much, but what I'm saying, they propagated that idea to cover the fact up they're a spy and in a spy agency, dwelling on a massive political regime. The regime is global. It's shipping ports all around the world.
Yeah.
And the regime is all about corporations. So it's about the corporation entity. You know, they're basically in secret. They're working for people like Rupert Murdoch. They're working for now Jeff Bezos. They're working for Bill Gates. They're working for Rockefellers. They're working for all these billionaires in secret who were directly affiliated to that president of the United States of America when I was stolen, which was Ronald Reagan. Now, Ronald Reagan, either way, was a corporation man, you know. He was a man designed around corporations dismantling unions and creating larger corporations, a larger entity or a new corporation or a military industrial complex or spend big, spend another $1 trillion on a military budget. That was Ronald Reagan, wasn't he? He was a big spender. He was a big spender as a president. So, you know, this was the problem that I was in as a child. I was taken into a massive government authority globally, you know, that was so powerful in that sense. No child should have been mingling with the people that I was mingling with. In the USA, I definitely names that I know that have come through what's called the DIO in Australia, Defence Intelligence Organisation. So, you know, child sex trafficking can become very advanced, very technical if you've been taken by government, corrupt government, because they profile you. And it's you've got to get out the FBI book then. You've got to start using the protocols that an FBI agency or a profiling agency, either the CIA or even Department of Homeland Security or the National Security Agency, there's many other departments in the United States of America that know how to profile someone. And now they can profile all your family's information and share it to 1 million other citizens if they please. They don't give a shit. You know, this is what's happened here in Melbourne. Current day Melbourne, I've got over probably 2 million citizens in Victoria with my family's information. This is it's the political gender that it is. They profile you using FBI and technical know-how in how to profile your family by kidnapping, obviously. They just don't profile you going to work and coming home every day. You're taken into their custody. You're taken into government custody. You're held against your rights and you're given no rights whatsoever. The way they got away with that with me as a child, not just in child sex trafficking, as I said, was Asia. They said it's a matter of national security. They're the shipping ports. Because shipping ports in Australia are a matter of national security. But a 3-year-old child is not a matter of national security because I'm not the head of a shipping port. 3-year-old children do not manage shipping ports. That's logic. See, that's logic. They don't use logic. They are using a platform. Now, you've got to imagine an intelligence platform. It's like a fusion center or an FBI intelligence platform. They don't care what age you are. They don't care if you're 2 years old, 100 years old. They will profile you. They don't care. They don't. Age has no meaning in their system because they're able to edit information. Because when they share your information to another family, say I'm 2 years old, my mother's 40 years old, they might share it to another family. And that other family might be a 12-year-old child and a 50-year-old parent. And then they share off your family's information and say, can you work in us with political sabotage? We're sabotaging these unions. We're going to strip them of their family's profile, strip you of your rights, not just of your legal rights. We're going to strip you of your organic flesh. We're going to strip you. Then it becomes the very bad things that happened to me was basically transhumanism. Plenty of photos I've still got from my childhood where you can see I look like an alien. I'm telling you right now, I've had my whole whites of my eyes when I was a child go black with my pupils, just completely black. And that was a Pentagon technology in my brain, known as the Department of Energy, I think it's called, Area 51. It's a nuclear department. They deal with nuclear technologies. That's where I was hidden in as a child. So why would the army steal me to ransom me off of shipping ports, yet I was taken into Pentagon secret operations, which later in Australia became what's known as CIA, Special Operations. This is how bad it is. These people are here living in Australia. I met them. All these years later, they've come forward. I met Eve in Darwin. She's an Aboriginal girl. She took me back home to meet her dad. He's an American living in Darwin. And he's from the United States of America, and he's from the United States Marine Corps. And he sort of tipped off that I remember you as a child. Like he let me know, in a sense. I know who you are, Adrian. You were in our forces. You were secretly in our forces, the United States Marine Corps. So, the US, where do these departments, what I'm saying, in the Pentagon, where do they branch off to? God knows. When you're taken into a military command service as a child, God knows what you're in, in your brain, you've got a technical, strategic capacity which has overridden your natural brain. So the technology they use in the Pentagon is another brain, I'm telling you right now, but it's more of a synthetic technology, like a spy agency technology. Now, I possibly believe that I was definitely in the CIA as a child, the Central Intelligence Agency, out of a cyber service, like cybersecurity, cyber intelligence, in a field where officers are employed to deal with nuclear weapons. Because the countries I was taken to afterwards, we ended up in Russia. I was taken to Moscow. I was taken to meet military officers. I was taken to Russia just after the military false alarm in 1983. That was where the Russian radar systems had been malfunctioned from somewhere else in the world. And the Russians believed that the United States of America military forces had fired an intercontinental ballistic missile heading at USSR. Now, at that time, I know I was in Ukraine with the Australian Army officer. We were crossing from Ukraine into Russia. So David Hurley's an absolute slime ball, I'm telling you, where he took me overseas. I was taken to France. I met the current president of France. I definitely met him as a child. And that was at a building in France where they gather intel. So these departments, I'm telling you, are so advanced They're so advanced, they know where to profile other people to suit their political agenda. So when David Hurley had taken me overseas as a child, all these interconnected departments, the National Security Agency, the FBI, the CIA, all these, even US, United States Marine Corps, they have access to intelligence departments where they can interlink you, I guess, to another system or someone else that works in another department. And then they can allow you to profile citizens that will suit your regime or what you're looking for in your movements. And say, well, that family works at that Catholic church there. That'll suit your investigation. We'll send you to that area of France, because in that area of France, there's a family there, Macron, and we'll send you there because they will suit your intelligence platform of what you're trying to structure. Long term, I'll tell you what I come from. Long term, what happened to me as a child long term is currently Prince Harry in California. So that is how Prince Harry has married Meghan Markle. Meghan, her father was actually working for the child sex trafficking ring in 1983. Thomas Markle. That's an agent name. It's not his real name. Thomas Markle. I guarantee you it's him. I guarantee you 100%. If I had $1 billion, I'll bank it right now. I bet it, and I guarantee you it's him. He was involved. He had me as a child when I was 3 years old in his custody in the US. So these people were employed, and you've got to understand, this wasn't a hierarchy system. David Hurley wasn't just working in a defence intelligence agency, or what's known as the DIO in Australia, Defence Intelligence Organisation, as just an undercover spy. He was dealing and mixing, as I said, with Hollywood VIP, CIA agents in Hollywood. These are all your presidents. These are, upper class, the really high class people all around the world. So, and I can guarantee it's definitely Emmanuel Macron, because it's how this intelligence platform was structured.
Yeah.
So, as I'm saying, a lot of my information now that I'm discussing is coming up to that age of 13 years old, where the army purposely allowed other citizens that I grew up with, and there was about 1,000. The figure seemed to be very narrowed down for some reason. I'm not sure if that was the American agency that said, we don't want 1,103. Just send us 1,000 people. I don't know why it was like that, but my friends that I grew up with even said that. They knew that. They knew that would be roughly a very round figure chosen. So don't ask me why. That was just something to do with the platform. The platform is very rounded off in regards to how it's operated in political espionage. So it is rounded off around 10 years. You'll find every operation they did with me as a child was 10 years. Then they cut ties on the day, to the hour, to the minute, to the second. The army would be gone. So, they were very proficient, and they knew what they were doing on time. So that's probably something to do with it. It's just government structure, government protocol, and not just government protocol. When they've called a matter of national security in Australia, they are allowed to gain up to 30 years to classify files on investigations. Now, if you're a victim like me of matter of national security, that means you're not allowed to go to court if they've done something criminal to you. If you were taken in under arrest, other agencies around the world are doing the same thing. And people complain about this even in the United States of America. They can arrest you under suspicion of being a terrorist. You have no rights. You are just arrested. You are just taken into their custody. And they'll tell you, we don't give a shit what you think. You're not getting a lawyer. You're not getting anything. They'll just smash you straight over the head with a baton. They don't care. This is the avenue they were taking me into as a child was, we just don't give a shit. This is our power, and this is what we can get away with. So that gave them 30 years. So that means any crimes they've committed against you under a matter of national security, you can never sue them for that, because you're not allowed to go to court, because your evidence, the criminals have got that, and the criminals are the government. And now the current government, Scott Morrison. So you're being abused by a government Yet under a matter of national security, I'm not allowed to get my paperwork because they say, you're locked down for 30 years, mate. Now, I was a child, so what did I do wrong to anyone? Nothing. I was just used because of my bloodline, because of my birthright to my father. But it's a pretty horrible life when you've done nothing wrong to anyone. You know, I've done absolutely nothing wrong to anyone my whole life. So a lot of children are like this that experience child sex trafficking and child exploitation. But that regime going to the US when I was a child goes directly to Harvey Weinstein in the US, direct to England. And that's how the other people in Australia that I grew up with, like Tom Hiddleston's name around Aspendale at the time is still William, but he was known as Dave Polton. Now, I used to go to Dave's house once a week when I was about 12 years old. So he lived at number 30 Larnook Crescent in Aspendale, Victoria. Everyone knew Dave. Everyone knew Polton. You know, Polton is now Tom Hiddleston, pretends to be English. He's a spy. He's in a spy agency. He's in what's called Five Eyes spy agency. They're 5 countries. So that's the United Kingdom, Canada.
You guys know who he is,
USA, New Zealand,
you guys know the actor? Do you guys know the actor? Chantal?
I know the name. I'm not too familiar with him, but yes. Is
the
he
Marvel,
an actor?
Marvel Comics and the movie Thor with Chris Hemsworth.
Yes.
Well,
yes. Wow.
Tom Hiddleston plays Loki. He plays the part Loki.
Yes.
Now, this is only one person I grew up with. You know how there's another at a minimum that I know, 10 of them there, right there in Marvel Studios. We all grew up together in Aspendale. So this is what I'm saying. My story becomes technical because I was held by the army hostage. Other citizens knew that was going on. My information is what I'm saying. It wasn't just localized to me. The community at a whole, probably up to 10,000 people from Southland Shopping Centre, so that's a suburb Cheltenham, all the way to the end of the train line, the suburban train line, called the town Frankston. And I think it's now called the satellite or small city Frankston. Everyone knows. Everyone knows on that coastline. So there could be up to 10, 20,000 people that know, because even going up to the years 92, 1993, beach parties, word of mouth, people are getting into Hollywood, people are getting into Marvel Comics. The blabbery going on, they were all told the doors are open. You just got to join the spy agency. So you just got to work for the army. They knew. You just got to work for the army while we hold this family hostage. And once we get rid of their dirty criminal unions, the army are all letting us go straight to Hollywood. So you got to say, I'm hanging out with people who are at my school that I'm being immediately watching them being bribed. So, that's going from 83 up to 92. So there's 9 years. So they didn't back off, is what I'm saying. The Australian Army maintained themselves on top of me the whole time. The whole time. Didn't matter where we lived. They were across the road. They were my school teacher. They were my vice principal.
Can I just ask you something here? Do you believe, and this is something which I'm thinking about in dealing with a lot of, let's call it products of people that have experienced this type of thing. Do you think they believe that you are their property, which is why, because they obviously would have invested a lot of time in you theirs from a young age, they spent money transporting you from A to Z to whatever. So you really just are their property now. You're not even a human being anymore. You just
exactly. That's
that is
100% right.
And they can do with you what they choose, because you have now you're not a human being to them. And this is what I say.
And the army trained, as I said, they trained other civilians in that behaviour. So I go down across to the local milk bar, someone attacks me with a warfare disease. They just walk past and throw it in my face. That's just showing me, mate, we're in the agenda. It's a type of threat. It's a way of threatening me, say, we still own you. Yeah. If you talk against us on the internet, Or if you talk tonight, because we know what you're doing tonight. We know you're going to be at home tonight talking on a live feed. So, you know, they're not just doing this they are doing it all the time when I go out to the shopping centre anyway, or especially servants. I just go and get petrol. They will get gangs who are working for a corrupt government. These aren't just gangs. These are gangs in like that. They've been cleaning out at the moment what's called that ANOM system, the FBI ANOM system, to hack these crime syndicates. In Australia, it's all rubbish. They're all government. They all work for police. All of them. Doesn't matter if it's a bikie gang. They're cops. I'm telling you, they're all dirty cops. They all work for cops, a whole lot of them, because they're all in pedophilia. Their money comes from pedophilia. The Australian government budget is funded by pedophilia. So anyway, this main line going from Canberra, Australian Capital Territory in 1983, when I was taken by the army overseas, I was given a fake passport. I didn't know I had a fake passport. And I was dressed up as a girl in the United States of America most of the time. I was dressed up in a dress. I was dressed like a little girl. I was 3 years old, but I was dressed like a girl.
Any reason for
very
that?
Sick, very sick. Undercover. You got to understand, this is a type of satanic sect under a Hollywood CIA mockery. Kidnapping me, ransoming me as a child was humiliating the unions. So I was basically kidnapped to be tortured and exploited, where they'd stockpile all the information they did to me and then sell it back through the general community, hoping it would slowly siphon back to the opposition government and other civilians back in Australia long term, where then they could humiliate the unions and say, look what we did to your unions. Look what we did to Victor Allard's son and got away with it, you know. This was a government humiliation program at such a level no one on earth, I don't believe, has ever suffered this, to tell you the truth, what I've been through. The type of transhumanism, I've been taken into the military ranks in the United States military forces as a child under the command of the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, the director at that time was William Casey, was the head of the CIA, with Ronald Reagan. Now, a lot of those photos, if you go back to 1983, look at those photos then, look at the photos then of Jeffrey Epstein with Donald Trump. They are all in that new entity, corporation. We're taking over the world with a new world order. The New World Order globally, as I said, was done through shipping. They dismantled unions globally, sacked them all. If they had to kill them, they did kill them. Not just in Australia. They went around other countries. They just brought military forces in, shot them dead, got rid of the bodies, and put their workers that worked for their corporation on shipping ports all around the world. There was too much money. China was becoming a massive shipping entity. Singapore in the 1980s, the early 1980s, was becoming a market globally. Shipping was worth trillions of dollars. So whoever was paying the Australian Army to do this privately, because they did this privately on behalf of Ronald Reagan, who was paying for it? Rupert Murdoch, the Rockefellers, Rothschild? I don't know exactly who, because there were so many of them. I just think all of them were in together financially.
Yeah, the bloodline.
But the biggest long-term market in the exchange of goods or moving goods has been Amazon. That has been a later forerunner, but he's come up as a big billionaire very quick. And that's based on what you can see is the movement of goods, like shipping goods, in and out, outbound goods. So, you can see, as you're saying, they think they own me. And in the United States of America, I would be seen as an authority to the president, because that's where I was as a child in Hollywood with the CIA and with Ronald Reagan. Now, the Queen's involved in this, and she still lies all the time. She's a liar. This is Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. She knows she knows too well what happened to me.
She's involved.
But she's involved, and she doesn't want to be dissolved. but she has been long term. I've been complaining now for 5 years. So since 2016, I have not stopped whinging through the messaging services to MI6, MI5, and the Central Intelligence Agency. The reason for this is I'm targeted by really bad terrorists in Australia, and the Australian authorities are so corrupt, we don't have law enforcement in Australia. Our police are part of a cocaine authority overseas in California. So we're owned almost, our police are owned, I guess you could say, by whoever's coming up in the organised crime world through Hollywood. So this is not just Hollywood as film. I'm talking Hollywood as the CIA, right? The Central Intelligence Agency. So this is, who is your next drug lord? Who is your next Mexican drug runner? You know, like for the big cartels of cocaine, where they might move 100 ton, 200 ton of cocaine. This drug in Australia is used as government. So when you've got cocaine involved, it's cocaine dash Australian federal government. That is their authority. So what is that authority? You see, there is no law enforcement. They don't give a shit. It's whoever's supplying the drugs up their nose. And this is exactly what Australia has turned into. Long term, the war on drugs by Ronald Reagan was such a fake operation. It was what billionaire corporations will take over and become the secret drug lords of the world. Because everyone that I grew up with, not just Tom Hiddleston, there's people I went to school with. They were in my own school class at high school. So this is moving right up to the year 1992. But Corey, now Corey is from New South Wales. He was from the year 1984 when I was trafficked through the state of New South Wales by corrupt army in the Special Air Service Regiment. So the army trafficked me around to civilian families. Now, they only chose certain particular families. It might only be to say 100 families. The rest of the child sex trafficking was done as, we hate that child and their unions. Now we've socialite, with our socialites who are VIPs, we've taken the child around to our chosen people. One of the chosen families I was taken to as a child by the army in 1984 is now the Princess Mary of Denmark. She's from Hobart in Australia. So that was called, as I said to you, the Defence Intelligence Organisation in Australia. Her father was secretly enlisted to a Freemason. I'd definitely call it a Freemason occult, but it was part of NASA. And it was involved in very advanced mathematics. And everyone who was involved in that military web space I was in as a child, it was highly advanced technology in my brain as a child. As I said, it was possibly a department, which I think is called the Department of Energy in the US, Department of Energy. That's all they're called for Area 51. So, this field was very specific. It was very advanced, well beyond me as a child. But I still had intelligence in the airspace. So I was in those two services as a child, not just one. I was still taken under the command of the Special Air Service. So that's US military forces and British back in Australia. I was still under the command of two services. Now, I would have been seen as a child as what you would call a shadow commander. The reason for that is there's two services. You're not meant to be enlisted into two different military forces like that. One service was an intelligence profile, like possibly CIA, definitely in the US. And then I was shadowed by a Special Air Service. So the commander was from the US and Special Air Service was British. And that created what was now known as the CIA MI6 departments. And how CIA and MI6 are now next to each other in the same bed together, in the same building. That was the authority I was in as a child. Those two services, CIA and MI6, both of them. But it was called Shadow Commander.
Why specifically were you in both if you say that was not normal? If you were only supposed to be in one, what specifically?
David Hurley wouldn't do it to his own brain. He became general of the Australian Army. This is why I'm saying it became transhumanism. There's no other military soldier. Oh, sorry, I might have missed what you're exactly saying then, the question. Did I miss what you were saying?
No, I don't think so. No. I'm just responding to what you're saying. I'm horrified.
Well, we're going into a technology that they don't usually talk about. It's not something we can search for on the internet. So I've experienced my whole childhood. You've got to understand here, with the technology that I know exists, I've experienced the military authority, and going from books all the way up to current day internet, we're still not allowed to gain any information on this unless you become part of the agency yourself. So unless you become, part of MI6 or part of the CIA, unless you get employed by them as an officer or the FBI in certain departments, then they will request that you become present at a certain facility at some time where your brain will be modified. That modification isn't done to the flesh of the brain, obviously. It's done to the human skull, and it's done around the human skull near muscle tissue. But it's a synthetic enhancement technology. Now, as far as I knew as a child, I was in a military service which led straight onto NASA. So the service I was in, I could go straight from Area 51, where NASA tested aircraft, from military forces, United States Marine Corps, straight to become an astronaut, basically. That was the service I was in as a child. So it was scientific, it was neuroscience, it was aerospace engineering, it was highly advanced synthetic military commander's web in my brain. But as I said, I was put into two services, and that's where it became transhumanism. No soldier in the world. That'd be seen as torture. That'd be seen as being taken by the enemy as a prisoner of war. And then the opposition would be taken by the North Koreans. The North Koreans enlist your brain into their secret intelligence agency, and then they shadow your military commander's web to use you as a prisoner of war and profile your secrets. Almost known as gathering intelligence is what it's called, from the enemy. So, this was done to me as a child, and this is real field agent operations. This is stuff that really happens in war.
But Adrian, sorry, I wanted to say there must have been something very special. I don't know what another word is for them to do that to you specifically, where they actually programmed you twice, I want to call it.
No, it wasn't specific at all. It was very logical. There's shipping ports globally all around the world, and they had to sabotage every single shipping port globally. How many countries are there in the world? Do you think the CIA has entry to every country in the world? I was taken into both services. No, they don't. That's why he had to use MI6. The only way you can get around to the rest of the world is through MI6. Yeah. MI6 is the only agency. They're known as the Secret Intelligence Service. They're the only other agency in the world where you can access Lebanon or Palestine or countries throughout Africa that are part of the Queen's secret military hierarchy. So that's where the Queen, this is what I was saying, I was taken out to socialise with this army officer to presidents in other countries or prime ministers back in 1983. We didn't just meet with your normal people. It's an intelligence agency. I was taken to meet an officer, then I'd be taken to a palace as a child. And then David Hurley would be meeting with a president or a prime minister. People were very powerful. So, this was the level of international strangulation they were trying to create through other world leaders at that time needed both agencies. They needed both agencies, CIA, MI6. Crazy. So what were they doing? Overall, what were they doing? They were so corrupt. They were using all their access to drugs and not claiming any responsibility. So the CIA, for starters, to send all the drugs to Australia, did they do it themselves? No. They just programmed the intelligence. So they programmed the code. The code goes off to the NSA, National Security Agency. Then the National Security Agency sends it off to the FBI. So then all the FBI are told is put pallet loads of cocaine on this ship and it's going to Melbourne docks in Australia. They've been doing that since 1983, sending pallet loads of drugs and saying that my dad was a massive global crime syndicate mafia boss of the world, basically, is what they were trying to frame my deceased father. So they were saying that they needed all this authority from the world because they were taking down the underbelly. And the underbelly is the most powerful mafia in the world. And they were actually located in Melbourne, Australia, of all countries in the world. This was their excuse, you know, this was the Australian Army's version of the story. Was it true? Bullshit. Everyone knows the American mafia are the most powerful people in the world. You know, if you're looking for mafia, United States of America are the mafia. So, you know, obviously it was a complete strategic Hollywood clown show, because it really was. Ronald Reagan is a Hollywood clown. And how many other CIA agents are actually in Hollywood? You know, there's a lot of them.
Mm. Yeah.
The celebrities I think I was taken to, I'm pretty sure I did get to meet Orson Welles before he passed away. You know him from War of the Worlds.
Yes.
I was taken to meet some older celebrities, Hollywood celebrities, no longer alive, but very powerful. They were in the CIA. They were in the Central Intelligence Agencies. They were spies in Hollywood, but famous. They were very famous people, very famous.
Wasn't Frank Sinatra, one of those, actually?
Yeah. I also remember a lady, Diane Keaton. She's also an actress.
Wow.
I know that her information ended up being pulled back through the DIO to Australia through Five Eyes. So this is what I'm saying. The information doesn't really ever get distorted, because the other Australian citizens that all are now in Hollywood, like Rebel Wilson, or whether it be Tom Hiddleston, or people I went to school with, like I told you, Corey. Now, Corey isn't that famous. He's just in rap music film clips. But I've seen him on Rage. If I watch Rage in Australia, you know, it's our music program that goes all night, you know, on weekends to watch, you know, music from around the world. There's my own schoolmate. Did I know he was going to Hollywood? Of course I did. You know, in 1992, there's probably 10,000 people all talking about how do we get in? How do we get in? What's the secret to getting in? Why are all these guys talking about Hollywood? Everyone's going in. Or Marvel Comics, you know, they were talking about comic books, which became Comic-Con, you know, for Marvel Studios. So that's where Joel is. We went to primary school together. Joel's over there. You see him on the red carpet. He's from Australia. We went to Edith primary school together. We went to primary school together.
So they all managed to...
He's turned up, and I've been watching Marvel Studios, and he's mocking me. He's even mocked me live on television. The only words he said live to the journalist, you know, like questioning all the superheroes and everyone out on the red carpet day, at the red carpet for Marvel, for the superheroes. That was Joel that I grew up with. And all he said is, oh, yeah, I'm the guy that made up the memories. That he was just, and I was watching TV. I just felt like, you're spying on me. Because why would you say that? That's something that he would say back in Aspendale, Edithvale, when I was growing up. Because they knew it was all about the DIO, the Defence Intelligence Organisation, the Army, were leaking intel to civilians and their children, like parents and their children.
Yeah.
So he's still being smug. He's on the red carpet in California, mocking me live on television, saying, oh, yeah, and I'm the guy that made up the memories. He's such a wanker. And he's still a wanker all these years later, you know? So, and that's only another one. And then we get to the next celebrity. Like, and I'm telling you, it just goes on and on all day with the amount of celebrities that I can talk about, and they're all over there. Why are they there, though? They're not really celebrities. They're there on an undercover investigation, you see?
Absolutely.
So are they celebrities, or are they actually a far right-wing extremist organisation?
Yeah.
And they're not celebrities. They're far right-wing extremist organisation posing as celebrities.
Yeah, they live cover lives.
And England.
They all have cover lives. They all have cover lives.
And I want to say, where Adrian was talking about where he lived in Aspendale, you said Aspendale, didn't you? I lived a couple of stations down. I lived in Bomb Beach, Chelsea. So a lot of the stuff he says about the streets and what was going on and blah, 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 it fits in with all the stuff I knew. Even though I wasn't in Aspendale, I was always on the Frankston line, and I lived all the way down to Sorrento, and he lived at Rye one stage. And then also my father in the day worked on the docks where his father was. My dad in the old days was a criminal, and he worked on the docks. So a lot of the stuff is jigsawing together. Wow. Like, you know, I just listened to Adrian the other day, and I'm like, hey, man, this is fitting in with a lot of the stuff that I know. This is all making sense. So I just wanted to put that in just to show that there is a jigsaw coming together with what he's saying, because I lived on the peninsula, but I never knew him. But this stuff, we both lived on the peninsula. So
wow.
Yeah. But as you can see, those people on the peninsula that she's talking about, they could all steal from me my famous career, because I was still to be a Hollywood celebrity. Still this very day, I would be seen as the head of Hollywood.
Wow.
So with Harvey Weinstein removed and the British connection, I am the British connection. I'm MI6 in the CIA. No one else got that service as a child. There was no one as Shadow Commander. No one else would do that. No military soldier would be stupid to be enlisted in those two services anyway. You see, that's why it was called Shadow Commander. It's a breach of service, basically. It's a breach of command. But it's still technically, and I'm not joking, I would still be, based on the Defence Intelligence Organisation, the head of Hollywood. So as I said to you, when I was taken, I was wined and dined with very big people, important people all around the world. Hollywood is not just the only one. They are VIP, but I was taken to South Africa. People contacted me recently, and they found me, and they're definitely agents. They're definitely undercover agents. They were Afrikaans, so they're more the style of, you know, racist style, Afrikaan style, apartheid supporter style Africans, South Africans. But anyway, she contacted me, and she had all my information. This is another perfect example of not just what Jane's talking about here of the peninsula. It's how they've allowed an open intelligence agency. And the army did that on purpose. So you can see here how Julian Assange was set up.
Yeah.
Because in Australia, we've got over 1 million people that have more information in secrets than what Julian Assange could ever access. Julian Assange is just a capture, a bait in a military, in a Vietnam veterans baited system globally, you know. Is he involved? Yes. I believe Julian Assange is an undercover agent in the same, not the same agency I was in as a child. He's in ASIO. He'd still be in another department of Five Eyes Spy Agency, but his dad was involved. So I did remember, as I said, meeting him as a child back in Australia. In Sydney, I met Donaldson family. I was told as a child while I was there with the army, his daughter's going to become a princess. The only lady to leave Australia recently and go to Denmark is now Princess Mary of Denmark.
Wow.
So these, as I said, these are the people's homes I was taken to. Her father was given that access, the same as Julian Assange. This was a very advanced agency. The agencies weren't just Australian, as I'm saying. It wasn't just Five Eyes either. In this time of the early 80s, going up to, let's say, the end of the Ronald Reagan presidency, they allowed his presidency to continue with a breach of military intelligence until the end of the Cold War. So that was 1991. So you can imagine from the years, basically 1982 to 1991, was breaches of military intelligence all around the world. People all around the world globally have access to billions of dollars of insider trading. What in the modern day term at the Westpac Bank in Australia, they call insider trading. Now that is another celebrity who is from Aspendale. You wouldn't know her. She's not that, probably not that known to most people, but her name is Iggy Azalea. She has starred in film clips with Britney Spears. You would know Britney Spears. Britney Spears has recently got out of the music industry. So you can see how close she is to me, Britney Spears. So this is what I'm saying. I'm the head of Hollywood based on a spy agency, not based on Hollywood, based on the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. So, and how the CIA was used with what's known as the British connection, MI6. But that was a child. I was a kid. I was 3 years old. This is how disgusting this is.
It's
this
insane.
is how they traded. You know how you're saying, you said before, they're acting like they own me. Of course they do. Because they knew I would never be the head of Hollywood. I was an abused child. But you can see how they're humiliating the abused child, though, aren't they? So these rich people, they're very sadistic. Their Satanism is very... It's not just mimicking, because they've got a massive mimicking program going against my family and myself in Australia currently over the past 4 years since I've been contacting the intelligence agencies. I've probably sent over 200 emails to MI5 with complaints. I've probably sent about the same to the CIA on their online web form. So I am harassing them, but are they responsible for me as a guardian? Technically, you see what I'm saying here? Even though they abused their power back in the 1980s, they took me into their military services and command as a child. I'm now an adult being attacked because of this abuse of military intelligence. So they're still my guardian, technically. They're still my parents.
Sure.
The CIA, even today, they're still my parents. So they're responsible for what is happening to me. Because are my other friends that are in this secret insider trading military agency, are they getting attacked? No, they're living in California or England as celebrities. You see, but they know the same information. So, why was I exploited, and yet other strangers in Australia that really had nothing to do with this were just chosen? They were just chosen from any walk of life. Now, Iggy Azalea, she lived only just down the road from me. I lived at 38 Iluka Avenue, Aspendale. We were set up there. We were propagated at that location in 1988. By then, they had bashed my mother again and split her head open with an axe. My mum was attacked by Peter Scully. He's now in jail in the Philippines. He was working for the Royal Australian Navy at Cerberus, Cradle of the Navy in Balnarring. But that accomplice in crime, his associate in crime, wasn't based there. He was based at another base called Flinders, Fort Gunnery. It's on, I think it's called Western Port Bay in southern Victoria. And it's another small country town. It's very beautiful, Flinders. But they've just got a very small, foot on a head, on a cliff head to the mouth of a bay. And they've just got a naval fort there. Really old fort from probably World War II, but it's still manned by the Royal Australian Navy. So this associate of Peter Scully was from there, and they were the ones that stole our house and car in 1986. Why was that done? Extortion. My mum owned the car. The original Ford Fairlane, they stole that, and that's how they steal your identity. This type of identity fraud is what I'm saying. Such an atrocity of government, because there was military forces getting involved in identity extortion. My mum had just bought that house after selling Scarlett Street. She bought the house in number 19 Parsons Street in Rye, and postcode there was 3941. We only lived in that house for about 6 months. My mum had to spend $13,000 before we even moved in of her money of selling the previous house. So it was a beach house up on stilts. The rear of the house met the ground. So it was a big, long, half an acre sloped property with a big, long driveway going up. And then it leveled out to a car park. And then it had big stilts with a big balcony with a rundown house. So my mum bought it cheap, but the house had been sort of condemned based on the balcony and no staircase. So my mum had to spend $13,000, get a new staircase and get all the balcony repaired and get the house basically fixed up. Then it could be signed off by the local council that it was safe to live in when my mum bought the house. We lived in it for 6 months. They stole the house and they got community mobbing involved, other criminals around this community, to say that my mum never even owned the house or she never even spent any money there. They illegally stole our car. They moved all our furniture out of the house and dumped it out front on a dirt road. It was the dirt road back then, Parsons Street in 1986. It was the end of the year, Christmas, 1986. Christmas, going to the start of the year, 1987. And my mum was too scared. It was Peter Scully. So they held us hostage in the front of the house. He had a real creepy voice. He said, "Lady, give us your car keys and your house, and we won't kill your child in front of you." Like, he had a real robotic voice as he was talking. And Glenn, his other associate, was from the Navy, Royal Australian Navy. And they said, "Lady, you made a bad deal." They were working for a man called Kerry Packer. His son now took over Crown Casino in Melbourne, James Packer. They did say that. They did mention the name, say, "Lady, we work for a man to do with gambling." They said, "You made a gambling debt with the wrong man." This was what they said. This is what I remember hearing as a kid. And then Peter Scully snuck up behind my mum while my mum was trying to hold me behind her, sort of tuck me in. And Peter Scully just swung at the back of my mum's head with an axe and just split her whole head open in front of me. So she had that wound for 2 years. She was too scared. She never went back to the house. They stole the house, stole all our paperwork, stole the car, and then impersonated my mum's identity. After stealing the house, they got a fraud, like a fraudulent woman, to say she is Anne Maria Wells.
Wow.
So for all these years later, still up to this current day, there is someone using that property address as my mother's identity. This was very bad what they were up to, the type of government fraud. This is a defense intelligence platform type of exploitation, which you really wouldn't understand unless you can get into the agency as an officer, a military officer, or a security member of security staff like MI5. You need to understand the intelligence platform and how you can exploit a family through that.
Yeah.
There is other people that know about this. We have seen other videos around the world of other people complaining about intelligence agencies, how these days they can just flick the terror threat switch, They just flick it on anyone and say, "You're on the terror watch list. You're on a terrorist watch list. You're now under inquiry." This is all you hear, though. You don't hear the actual truth of what happens to people. And I can deliver all that information of what they do to you after they flick the on switch, what they can get away with doing, stealing your family home, taking your car, getting an undercover agent to impersonate your mother after they've stolen your house. That undercover agent then becomes a corporate identity in secret through the Defence Intelligence Platform. And that Defence Intelligence Platform then becomes a Westpac Bank, Hollywood, direct to Hollywood, insider trading network between Australians who are in this far-right-wing extremist organisation to Hollywood. So what does it say for Hollywood in regards to political motivation? They are sick people in California. Hollywood overall have proven that they are far-right-wing extremists, is what I'm saying, because they're the people they support. They support those people. What I mean by that is, even though I'm meant to be the head of Hollywood, and obviously that never would happen, this is based on authority. So this is based on a defence intelligence platform, okay? And this is where you access. You could be in South Africa. You could go to your local military security service, or say South Africa's Security Intelligence Service. If you entered that service, you would be able to access the cyber service, and you could access information held by South African government authorities on governments and civilians all around the world. Because every intelligence agency does that. They have information on people all around the world. So, this is a big intelligence platform. This is not restricted. This is not just that peninsula where I grew up. It's that peninsula became involved because that's where I was located and growing up.
Yeah.
So, those people down that coastline is what I'm saying. They're all celebrities now in England and in Hollywood. But are they important? No, because I could have lived in anywhere else in Melbourne is what I'm saying. My mum could have lived in Geelong. That just would have meant that they would have chosen celebrities from Geelong And there would have been Australian citizens from that area that will all be living in Hollywood and England now. So these people aren't that important that are over there, and they're given a mass celebrity network to use in intelligence crime. What this has turned into long term, it's turned into what's known as a targeted individuals program. Most people know about TIs, what is known as a modern day TI, a targeted individual. This is what it actually is, and these are the actual people that operate it. And it is run by the CIA in Hollywood. Hollywood is the overall investigator of their conglomerate with the FBI and CIA and their ability of governance and access of security in the state of California, where they've instigated this abuse of power back in the days of Ronald Reagan, which has turned into, internationally, a targeted individuals program. So this is where organised crime syndicates go around and target innocent people, and they can put a highly advanced CIA implant in the brain, or a microchip from California, something from Silicon Valley, or a test experiment implant. And you've just been to hospital because you might have a liver problem or a stomach problem or something, a basic day surgery. And this has happened to me in 2010. And I went in, I came back out as a cyborg in 2010, Darwin Hospital in public. That's another story, but that I was already threatened by other people I knew up there. Dean Ranke, who was my boarder, he was saying that he knows it's Hollywood. So again, there was talk around Darwin all about Hollywood. Every time it's Hollywood.
Yeah.
2016, I'm still getting attacked by the implant technology. Who turns up in Darwin in secret, and even the radio station was told to keep his name undercover. Didn't want his name being said public on the radio. Keanu Reeves from The Matrix. How does he know where I was? He comes and finds me at the Chinese takeaway cafe called Happy Dragon in Perak. And they were trying to kill me at the same time. The Americans. In Darwin, they've got a military training. They have what's called pitch black. Then they train between Indonesia and Japanese and other Asian forces. But then they have an interconnected training missions with different parts of the Pentagon, different departments. So they come to Australia and they say, well, what would happen in this situation? So then you end up with the US Marines and the US Army training in Darwin out of the airport with the Australian Army and the Australian Royal Australian Air Force, so forth. Anyway, they were attacking me with helicopters around Darwin. At the same time, while Keanu Reeves was in Darwin, they said it was a Hollywood celebrity. They said it didn't say female or male. They said it was from The Matrix, but they said we're not allowed to say his name. They said this on the Darwin radio station in 2016. I was doing my clothes washing, as I said, in Perak. I walked down to Happy Garden and I felt infiltrated by an agent anyway. I felt not just claustrophobic, I felt like I'm being monitored because I've got US Army helicopters flying over me, hitting me with directed energy weapons. I'm not joking. I'm standing inside the laundromat and I'm getting radiation tingling over the top of my head. They're flying over me in military helicopters and trying to reactivate the old service in my brain. I don't have that anymore. I was tortured so bad as a child, I don't have what's called the Department of Energy anymore, Area 51. I don't have that technology. It was burnt off my brain by a microwave weapon. So I don't know why they were doing experimentation. It still just proves that Keanu Reeves is still involved in this far right-wing extremist Australian Army and civilian conglomeration of shipping port controls, drug trade controls internationally, and especially drugs. Overall, I think it just comes down to cocaine, to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, with Hollywood, it just seems to be cocaine has become global governance, is what I'm saying. Through their extremism and abuse of power, they've used the drug and the access to it to manipulate government globally and shipping ports globally. So,
Adrian,
you know, where did
sorry,
so this is the sum of my story, but
yeah, I think I just wanted to say it's amazing. We've had you on for nearly 2 hours today. I would love to continue our story, possibly next week or even sooner. We'll chat to Jane offline, because I think, I mean, I'm mesmerized by what you're telling us, and I loathe to cut you short. I'm sorry, but we're hitting 2 hours here, and it's actually amazing to hear what you have to say. And I've no doubt that you have so much more still to share. So I look forward to having you back on our show if you're willing. Would love to have you back so you can just share some more of your incredible story, because I think, you know, when for me, when I think I've heard it all, I mean, someone like you pops up into my reality, and then it's just like, whoa, this is like a whole different ball game. Yeah. So thank you so much for stepping up and stepping out and speaking up and speaking out. I think it's so important that people like yourself are doing it. And I know it takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery, my gosh. But yeah, thank you so much. And Janie, thank you. I don't know if there's anything else, Janie, you'd like to say before we end off.
Oh, I was just going to say, it was good sitting back and listening, wasn't it?
Yeah, wow. It's like a story from another. I mean, it's like, what? I mean, not even the movies are that intriguing. You know, this is like, wow.
I know. Geez, Adrian, that's what you could do. That's what you could do. But
exactly.
That's another story. But that's definitely something that I see all the time. There's always another Hollywood movie that has an underlying CIA platform within each Hollywood movie, with a reference to my childhood. Now, that's not done because of American citizens. That's done, as I said, due to Australian citizens that I grew up with that are now Hollywood celebrities. And it's just them of adding that little bit of the Defense Intelligence Organization each time to a Hollywood movie. And it's always someone like Hugh Jackman, or there's so many movies like don't if we start going into Hollywood movies, how many times they've done it? Like, you know, I sit down and watch a Hollywood movie, I nearly start crying because they're mocking me.
Yeah.
But it's not mocking you on a level direct, it's mocking you on a level of a defense intelligence platform. You know, so they're putting a little bit of the CIA into the movie each time. Just a small bit of the CIA. It might only be the way they've said something and the way they've created a personality at that point in time in the movie. But it's something that references exactly something from my childhood growing up in Australia.
Yeah. Well, I suppose next
during
time,
the Australian Army. So
whatever you want to continue with next time we talk will be cool. And that's why I was going to say
my story is the sorry, keep going, Jane.
I was going to say, with what you're saying, that's why I don't like shows like Saw and, you know, all those horrible, disgusting, hostile, this and that, because I know a lot of that shit is true.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, they always tell us in front of us, like the movies, what exactly is going on. So, Adrian, you're picking up on what you know and what's on TV. And when I see things like hostile and all that bullshit, it makes me angry, because people sit there and they want the entertainment, and it's not entertainment, it's people's real lives that this is happening to. Yeah, it
is. But as I said, it's a form of the CIA in the Hollywood movies. It's a version of knowing how to present yourself as an actor and present yourself from a time seen as the time of money. So these Australians that I grew up with that are now celebrities, they're acting as what's known as a cyber platform, a cyber intelligence platform. So during the Hollywood movie, they engage about 10 seconds or 20 seconds of CIA sort of access to an intelligence platform. And they'll say something exactly from my childhood or something from school where we grew up. But they say it because the Army were at school. That was my teacher. He was an Australian Army commando. So it's information from Security Intelligence Service, you see, and they're saying that back through Hollywood movies. But it's not the Americans, it's Australians in the Hollywood movies, as I said.
Yeah.
So, again, it's a mockery, but I don't know why they bother keep doing it. I think they should let up on the whole thing, because it has turned into a political extremist type of propagation through these movies.
I think it's a matter of, I really think it's a matter of time before that whole cult actually crumbles. It's really, I think it's on the crumble, starting with a crumble.
As I said, I don't think they're in a cult, the Australians there. They've joined the occult. Are they really the occult? No. As I said,
Part of
we
the
just grew up
cult.
on the peninsula.
Not just the cult, not so much the occult. I think that cult indulges in that occult, though. Yeah.
They were given clearance. Another way, they were just given clearance by the Australian Army to go over to where they're positioned today in movies. So, I mean, Nicole Kidman is another one, but she knows too well who I am. That's how I was in the US when she was given clearance through the Australian Army to be sent straight to the US in 1983. So basically the film directors and everyone said, we'll take her. We'll take Nicole Kidman as an agent against my identity. So she's an agent in disguise against my identity. So this is why I'm saying, in a sense, I'm still ahead of Hollywood based on the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, not Hollywood. Hollywood is just delighting themselves in movies using a platform called cyber intelligence from the CIA.
Yes.
So they're delighting themselves in the world of intelligence, you know, how to be a cyber actor with intelligence. So anyway, it's still rude.
It's
overall,
insane. It's a whole,
It's still,
I mean, it's amazing how suddenly my eyes open up. And I think so many people, when they're listening and hearing this stuff, it's like, ding, your eyes really open up to a whole different reality.
I mean, there's so many homes I could take you to. I could start my own tour company and drive you around to all these Australians' homes and where they live that are now celebrities in England or the US.
Yeah.
We went to school together. Come on, as if I don't know where they lived or know who their parents are. I know who everyone is. You know what I'm saying? So if I went to California on a holiday to Hollywood, I'd be guaranteed to bump into them. Or they'll be hiding from me, one of the two. Anyway, as I said, we've gone over time, over 2 hours. Thank you for listening to me. I've tried to do my best. You've got to understand I'm a victim of not only, as I said, recent torture too. So my brain is really suffering. I'm really suffering as a targeted individual. Before the year 2010, I was much more mentally probably active. My brain has suffered a lot of damage over the past, say, 10 years now, since going to hospital in Darwin. I got attacked basically by a terrorist surgeon. So I've got implants in my ears, a microchip in the back of my head, an implant in my chest. It causes a lot of electronic shocks. It causes brainwave problems. It causes problems when I'm sleeping. So basically I get a lot of sleep deprivation, which then causes, over long term, sleep deprivation then starts to cause aging, other problems, health problems. So yeah, they haven't killed me directly, but I know it's definitely them. As I said, it was a bit suspicious that Keanu Reeves turned up when he did in 2016, 6 years after going to hospital. But he turned up and made himself president in front of a Chinese, that Happy Garden where I was. Was it him? I don't know. But Darwin radio station, when I turned on the radio in the car, they said there was a Hollywood celebrity in Darwin. They're not allowed to say who it is, male or female. But then about 2 hours later on the radio station, they said, we've got an update. The celebrity's from the Matrix. So it was Keanu Reeves. What did he want? I don't know. Probably wanted to know why they're torturing me, maybe. Maybe Keanu Reeves wanted to know what are they doing? Why are they torturing Adrian Wells, you know? Because he would know them. In the Matrix, he would know Australians that I grew up with that live there in California that know me or probably talk about me in secret. Or probably even say, I'm going to kill Adrian Wells if I can get away with it. So maybe Keanu Reeves come over to find out what's going on here. You know? What is all this about? I'm not too sure.
Well, I pray for you to stay safe because I think you have an amazing message to share. I think it's such a crucial, important message, and I really look forward to having you back on in future again. So thank you so much for joining us today, Adrian. Thank you, Janie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Janie.
Thank you, Monet.
Thank you.
Okay, I've not quite sure what to do now, Monet.
Just a normal goodbye.
It's our first live show.
I'll say thanks for having me. I'm going to go and have a cup of tea now.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Janie. Thank you, Adrian. And thank you, everyone, for watching our first live show. Wow. how insane is this? And we're definitely going to be having more of Adrian. I think I'm still wrapping my head around, or unwrapping my head around this crazy story that I've been following. I don't know about you guys, but wow, this is information that really needs to get out there. So please share and share and share and share, and like and subscribe and press the notification button. And yeah, I think it's really time, and especially, you know, Australia, as South Africans, we love Australia. You know, we have this amazing friendly rivalry between our countries when it comes to sporting activities and stuff. I've got siblings who live in Oz as well, lots of South Africans there. So it's a country very, very close to my heart. And I know just from stuff I've been reading over the last 10, 12, 15 years, the first really horrifying story that I read was about the Australian government involved in the child hunting activities, which in itself, and now recently that's been confirmed by Jesse Zabota and certain other whistleblowers as well. So we know this stuff has been going on. And Adrian, I just, yeah.
That's another story.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing the rest of your stories, definitely. And I know there's probably a heck of a lot to unpack. So I look forward to hearing that. And again, thank you for stepping up and stepping out. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Thank you.
you.
Okay.
Good job, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, what do I do, Monet?
Wait, let me do this. You can sign out. There we go.